I got my R-Pod back. In this episode, I'll provide an update on my now resolved R-Pod floor warranty issue. In a recent video, I shared the issue I was having concerning the kitchen floor flexing and that it had not yet been resolved. In the next few minutes, I'll provide a quick recap, a status update, and the fix that Forest River implemented. Hey everybody, this is John Marucci. Thanks for visiting the On the Road YouTube channel. This channel is all about helping you get the most out of your RV travel experience. Before we get going, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when new videos are published. If you want to dive deeper, we put more content and photos on Instagram and Twitter at John Marucci. So let's jump in. So to recap, in the video R-Pod floor warranty issue, I shared a detailed timeline concerning the situation with the floor issue. If you have not already seen the video, there's a link in the cards at the top of the screen. When we filmed the previous video on July 4th of 2019, I had taken my 2017 R-Pod 179 back to the factory in Goshen, Indiana on June 24th, 2019, and was told that the techs would look at the floors the next morning. Since I had not heard anything back, by Thursday 6/27 I inquired again concerning the status of the R-Pod and was told that they were hoping to have some answers the next day. I again requested an update on Monday 7/1 and have still not heard any response when we filmed the previous episode on July 4th. So let's talk about the status update now. The preceding video was then published on Sunday night 7/7. On the following day, I again contacted Forest River by email and, quote, "My R-Pod was delivered to the factory 2 weeks ago today. You previously mentioned that a tech would look at the trailer the next day and that it would only be a day or two. I would appreciate an update. Has the trailer been looked at? If not, why not? If so, what cause has been determined for the weak floor issue?" Unquote. Later that same day, I received a response from Forest River in email. "I do apologize for the delay. Our service techs have determined that they're going to repair the floor. The floor is solid. They don't believe any water damage is inside the floor. The repair will start tomorrow and it should be done by Wednesday." I responded the next day on Tuesday, July 9th, quote, "Thank you for the update. Please let me know when it is ready to pick up," unquote. Later that same day, I received a response from Forest River. "Your unit will be completed and ready for pickup tomorrow after 1 p.m. That would be July 10th. Because of work commitments, we determined that Friday, July 12th at 1:30 would work best for me to pick up the R-Pod, as I had requested to meet with the tech who worked on the repair, and this time was the soonest this could be arranged. So on Friday, 7/12, I arrived at the Forest River factory in Goshen, Indiana at the scheduled time to pick up the R-Pod. I was immediately greeted by the technician who completed the repair on the floors. The repairs looked good, and the tech was pleased to show me the work he had done. And later in this video, I'll share the detail on precisely what repairs were made to fix the floor. But there was frustration with the process, and I just want to recap this because it's very important. First of all, it took 120 days from initiation of the process to completion. I initiated the process on March 11th, 2019, but we were unable to schedule the unit to be checked out at the factory until June 24th of 2019, 3.5 months. And work was finally completed on July 10th of 2019, which is almost exactly 4 months or 120 days. Secondly, there was a lot of frustration with having to take the unit to the dealer first, if you remember from the initial video. The floor issue was a severe issue, and it would have been so much easier just to take everything down to the factory and have the floors repaired, as well as the other minor repairs that my dealer did. Now, my dealer was 150 miles away, and Goshen, Indiana is only 50 miles away, so it was really out of the way and a difficult circumstance to have to go, take time off work, and go all the way to Ohio to get things fixed that were very minor. And the other thing that was a difficulty here was previously Forest River did let me take the unit down to the factory in 2018, and everything was done down there at that point, and this year they wouldn't let me do that. Third frustration was very poor communication. I mentioned this quite a bit in the first video, but they just weren't responsive. I had to continually follow up on emails about communication and statuses. There's a lot of failed expectation, especially at the end when I was promised basically 2 days for it to be fixed, ended up being 2 weeks. Another 2 weeks without my pod. And fourthly, I just generally felt devalued and deprioritized. It was a very different experience the second year trying to get warranty work versus the first. And I think there's just a general lack of holistic thinking between like sales and marketing and warranty departments as far as how they treat the customer. You know, I purchased 2 R-Pods in 3 years, my 171 and my 179. And actually, folks, I was thinking about maybe looking at another one, maybe upgrading again. But those plans have actually been put on hold because of this recent experience. It really was that frustrating. So let's talk a minute and segue into like potential water issues, because there's many who assume that whenever you mention a floor issue, it's got to be water related. You have to have some leak somewhere in the R-Pod, or some leak on the frame, or somewhere in your seals, why the floor is having issues. And I'm just here to tell you that's not always the case. Okay, in the situation with my R-Pod 179, it just wasn't the case. We looked at it in detail and couldn't discover any area where water was coming in. We took it to the dealer in April. Their techs couldn't discover any water intrusion. And finally, it was confirmed by the factory techs at Forest River that there wasn't any water issue. So while water was not the issue with my R-Pod, it's something that you, as an R-Pod or RV owner, should be diligent in watching. It can be destructive and can invalidate your warranty. So be very diligent when you're talking about water issues. If you have any leaks at all in your plumbing, make sure you get them taken care of. Make sure you check your seals regularly and your caulk to make sure that's up to date and current. So what caused the problem with my 179? So in short, it's a design issue. There's no floor support in the 179 from the back of the gray tank support to the bumper of the 179. That's the entire back 4 feet of the unit. It's a high traffic area in the 179. When you walk in the door of the 179, you're in the kitchen. That kitchen has no support under it. It's the walkway to anywhere in the R-Pod. Besides that, it's the kitchen, right? It's the high utility area. It's right where you stand when you're doing dishes, when you're working, cutting something up for a salad, when you're working on the stove cooking something. It's where you stand all the time. And guess what? There's no support. So think about it from a house perspective. If you just take a trip down to your unfinished part of your basement in your house and look up at your floor supports, you're going to see joists about 16 inches on center to support your floors. Just imagine looking up and seeing no support for 4 feet. That's what you're talking about. There's no support under the 179 for about 4 feet. All right. So there's 2 main factors that would affect whether you have the same floor problem. First of all is traffic. So you can have a lot of people using the R-Pod all the time. You're going to have a lot of traffic going through that floor area in the kitchen, and the frequency of use, is going to start to deteriorate the quality of the floors. Now in our situation, that was probably the main cause because, we began noticing the issue right around 200 nights of use. Now that's a lot of use. We used the R-Pod quite a bit in 2 years, 2 trips down to Florida and a lot of other camping during season. So we use this at 200 nights. We started seeing that these floors are starting to get soft and bouncy a little bit. A lot of you may never get that high as far as night count in your R-Pod, and so less use would probably delay the issue, and you may not even notice it and just occur later in the life cycle of the floors. The second obvious thing is weight. So if you're a lighter weight person, it may not occur quickly. If you're a little heavier, you may have more issues quicker on the R-Pod floor, so just be aware of that. Okay, so now let's talk about the solution. So after all that, we're going to talk now in detail about what Forest River did to solve the problem, because I'm very happy with the solution at this point. After determining that water wasn't the issue, Forest River implemented the following solution to help reduce the amount of flex and give in the floors. They did so, by the way, without affecting the interior appearance of the R-Pod at all. They didn't tear anything up in the interior, didn't remove any cabinetry or anything, which was great. So here's the materials that they used to reinforce the floor, and this is all from outside and underneath, by the way. They used 2 metal support bars. They're 1.5 inch square metal. They're approximately 58.5 inches long. Now each support bar had end plates welded to them, about 6 inches wide and 2.5 inches tall, and about 1/8 of an inch thick. So they welded those plates to those bars. Then there was plywood used. 48 inches wide and 58 inches long and approximately just a little less than an inch, about 7/8 inches thick. And they put a vapor barrier around that plywood and put that to the underside of the R-Pod. So let's talk about how they used these materials and how they applied them, because this may be very interesting to some of you who have 179s, maybe thinking about this same thing. First of all, the plywood, and again 48 inches by 58, was wrapped with vapor barrier and attached to the underside of the R-Pod, beginning just past the rear of the gray water tank. So they fitted this piece up, already wrapped, and then they secured it with screws, which we'll talk about in a second. But you got to note, if you're going to do this piece of plywood, that there's a 4x8 inch cutout where the gas and electric lines have to go up into the kitchen. So this piece of plywood was attached with screws along both the front and the rear of the R-Pod near the gray tank support, and at the back by the bumper with screws, many screws along both sides. And it was also attached with screws from inside the R-Pod, the same strip where the cabinet's attached to the floor, going down through the original floor and into the new plywood. Fortunately, no other modifications were made on the inside of the R-Pod, which I'm very happy about. So the first support bar was then attached across the chassis. So you have plywood on there first, then you're putting a support bar under the plywood. This first support bar was attached 9.5 inches to the rear of the gray tank, right toward the back. And this bar was attached by 5 self-tapping screws on both plates on both sides of the frame. The second support bar was then attached across the chassis again, 18 inches from the first support bar, so toward the bumper, and at the rear of the R-Pod. So this bar was also attached with 5 self-tapping screws on both sides into the frame. This left about 27 inches from the second support bar to the rear R-Pod bumper. Now remember, that part in the 179, that's all cabinetry back there. You're not walking on that section. Then they hung brackets to, hanging brackets to reattach the gas and electric lines into the plywood. So a quick note that after bringing the R-Pod back home, I additionally added dabs of silicone caulk around the screws on the underside to further protect the new subflooring. So the results, let's first talk about the reinforcement. So the reinforcement is visually unnoticeable without looking underneath the R-Pod, so you don't notice it inside at all, which is great. Second, inside, the floors feel much more stable. No big give in the kitchen anymore. While you can still feel a bit of flex between the support bars while walking through the cabin, it's much less noticeable. Third, I'm satisfied with the result. The process, by the way, was much more painful than it needed to be, but the result is very good as far as effects. Fourth, having seen how the 179 is designed and the problem I experienced, if I purchase a new 179 or similarly designed model, I'd likely consider proactively adding an additional support bar or bars early on to help prevent the issue from occurring in the first place. So in closing, there's the floor warranty update and details around the solution for the floor fix. Hopefully this is helpful to those who may be experiencing something similar or who own an R-Pod and were wondering how to fix such an issue. I'm very pleased with the fix as of this video, but wonder why a bar or two couldn't be added to the chassis to support the kitchen floor when the units are being assembled. It would likely eliminate significant frustration and loss of value for the customer. Ideally, this video would bring about an ounce of prevention that would eliminate the need for a pound of cure. I invite you to follow along on Instagram and Twitter for any additional updates concerning the flooring, as I'll post updates on those venues for this issue going forward. So thanks for watching. This is John Marucci, and so long for now.